We will now call to order the Wednesday, November 18th, 2020 meeting of the Land Management Committee to order. Could you please take the roll call?
Mrs. Sherling.
I am here.
Mayor Judd. Mr. Grubb.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Borboom.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson. Mr. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Breitling.
Here.
Ms. Monjo. Mrs. Preston. Mr. Zimmerman.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. The quorum is present.
All righty, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. We will take a look at the agenda in front of you. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If not, a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Breitling.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Campbell.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All those opposed, say aye.
Aye. Oh, excuse me. I misspoke.
I know I go backwards on this one, so but thank you. Yes. All right, then we will. The agenda is approved. And take a look at the minutes from October 21st. Any corrections or additions to those minutes? Or a motion to approve?
Olson seconds.
Thank you. I didn't.
Olson makes the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a second?
Bruce Grubb, second.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Okay. All those opposed, again, say aye. And the motion carries. All right. Item number 4, property acquisition status report, which is B in your packet, pages 5 through 15. Eric, are you taking this?
You bet. Thank you, Chair and committee members. As Mary noted, in your packet is the acquisition status report for this month. The cover page is normal and customary, nothing really to point out there. The page that's shown on the screen here is the overall status of our acquisition program. I always like to take a minute to note a few items on here. You'll notice, again, the green color is parcels that we have acquired, and we're up to 419. That's an addition of, I think it's 6 parcels since last month, and so continued steady, slow and steady progress. I would also point out that right above the green, we see these 2 red colors, the condemnation for acquisition with the 13 behind it. That means we have deposited with the court the funds necessary to complete a quick take action, also known as last resort eminent domain, on 13 of those parcels. That's been a long process, and obviously we're continuing to try to negotiate, but we've had a growing number of those that we've had to take through the county commission and seek approval for that. There's been quite a few parcels in addition to what is shown on the map here, and so just as a heads up, next month when we produce this report, I'm guessing it's going to be much more Christmas colored, red and green, than it is blue. So hopefully there's no surprises with that. You'll also note here the purple color purchase agreement signed. At the time that this was prepared, we had 7 purchase agreements signed. Again, these numbers are pretty fluid, and they're updated on at least a weekly, if not a daily basis, as we're making more progress. So just a few things to point out there. Maybe if Tammy, if you can keep scrolling down, the next page is the status summary for the BioGeo easements. We are waiting on appraisals right now, and so no real significant progress on these at the moment, but come next year, I'm anticipating having some of these colors change as well, from the red color to the green color on this map. The subsequent pages are, I guess, more detailed, and I think you're all probably familiar with that. I would just turn to the next page on the southern embankment, that one right there. We did add, in the middle of this page, you can see the Drain 27 wetland project. That's an area where we do have the real estate request from the Corps, and we have a few appraisals starting to trickle in. We just had 5 of those areas approved last week. And we're making offers on those wetland parcels. And so that's been added to this report, and to sort of make room for that new project, on the right side, you see the completed. That was the diversion inlet and the wild race control structure. Those have been completed and construction is underway on those. And so I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Otherwise, I think the rest of the report just has more details by each one of the different categories. Certainly happy to answer any questions if you have any, but I would pause there with those highlights.
So Eric, are we on time with where we're supposed to be?
Yes, we are on time. We've been communicating our progress with the Corps, and I guess the areas that are sort of being driven by a schedule right now are really kind of 3 areas in particular. One is the diversion channel, which I think you're all probably aware of. The 6th draft of the RFP went out to proposers last week, and I guess the P3 procurement process is underway, and so our land acquisition program is in coordination with that effort. The second area where we're really driven by a schedule right now is the next page down, Tammy, shows the Southern Embankment Reach 1. And so that's an area where we have got a couple parcels acquired on the top left of this page, but we have not been able to strike a deal on the bulk of those property owners. There are 1 or 2 property owners that own the bulk of that land, and so that's an area where next month I'm anticipating quite a few of those blue boxes to be red colored. And then the third area is I-29, which is kind of in the middle of the page. Oh, you were right there, same page right there. So the I-29 is an area where the Corps, similar to SE1, the Corps intends to award bids for I-29 and Southern Embankment Reach 1 early next year. And so our acquisition schedule is driving to get those acquisitions complete for their bidding process.
And could you just tell this group how many have come before the Cass County Commission and how many are left to go and how many have settled out of that?
Yeah, you bet. So we've been in front of the county commission 7 times, and I like to speak of this in terms of actions that we have requested of the county commission. Collectively, for those 7 visits in front of the county commission, we have asked the county to approve the use of eminent or quick take or last resort eminent domain 48 times. The county commission has granted that approval. Basically means we have followed this statutory process and we've followed all the steps in the recipe. Of those 48 parcels, we have reached an agreement on 6, and we are actively negotiating with a handful, probably a dozen or so more than that. So continue to make some progress, but yeah, that's where we're at.
And at what point do you anticipate to become actively engaged on the Minnesota side and, with that group?
So as you might recall, we did send out a pretty broad mailing back in October to all of the upstream impacted property owners. And in that mailing, we let people know that if they have structures on their parcel, our intention is to start appraising those structures this winter. So in the next month or so, we intend to be contracting with various appraisal firms, and they will stage out their contact with the property owners, starting that appraisal process. That includes both North Dakota and Minnesota. Of course, there's a few fine details on the fringes of the Minnesota area that we need to iron out through the settlement agreement. but those things are moving forward and we want to get appraisals started. The appraisal really serves as a key foundation to our negotiations, a foundation to our offer, a foundation for relocation benefits, and basically the entire acquisition process.
Okay, thank you. So who else has questions for Eric? Anyone else? Well, then let's move on to item number 5, which is C in your packet, pages 16 through 19, the Environmental Monitoring Easement Action Plan Update.
Yeah, thank you. As you've heard us talk about a number of times, we have, the Corps has identified nearly 400 parcels that they would like us to have easements so that they can conduct monitoring for biotic and geomorphic surveys, not only in the near term, but over a 50-year period of time to see how environmental conditions change with the existence of the project. Ultimately, that monitoring will be turned over to the Diversion Authority, and we will be needing these easements to do that monitoring. So last year, we had an action plan that we had shared with the committee and shared with the Corps. That action plan was really focused on how to get access for doing the monitoring in 2020. Many of those access agreements ended up being a right of entry, which was effective for the monitoring in 2020. It's also effective for helping refine the easement bounds that we ultimately will need to obtain. And so the Corps has completed their field work. They completed that maybe a month or so ago. And now they are in the process of using that completed field work to finalize the easement boundaries. We have an appraiser under contract who's doing the appraisal work and incorporating those final easement boundaries, and anticipate having those appraisals back for certification by the joint board in December and by the MIC board in January. And that appraised value along with the new easements will then be presented to the property owners beginning next spring. And then offers and negotiations will commence from that standpoint. The other thing that I guess is a little bit different in this action plan that I wanted the group to be aware of is, as you've heard and as we just got done talking about, many of the acquisitions for the footprint of the project are being done following the quick take or last resort eminent domain process. And that was really driven by the timeline of construction. As we contemplated which statutes to follow for these easements, we had quite a bit of discussions with our legal counsel as well as with the Corps, and it's been concluded that we would follow a regular eminent domain process. And so basically these easements are needed, but the time frame within which they're needed doesn't necessitate the use of quick take. And so that's, I think, from a legislative standpoint and from a legal standpoint, we've been advised, don't use quick take if you don't need it. And so with that sentiment in mind, we are planning to follow the regular eminent domain process. And so I just wanted the committee to be well aware of that. Of course, that applies to the North Dakota side. On the Minnesota side, the statute is rather consistent, and we'll be following those statutes on the Minnesota side. So those are just a few things I wanted to point out. We have previewed this action plan with the Corps. They're fully aware of it. Their input has been incorporated, and I guess wanted the committee to be aware of those high points as well. So happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Eric? Okay, then let's hear about the horse barn.
Yeah, last month, I think I was a little bit out of town, but there was some discussion about a horse barn that we had purchased a little while back because of uncertainty and its relationship to a sort of larger parcel issue. Now with the FEMA Clomer designation, We know that the horse barn is not impacted. And so therefore we've put that horse barn and the associated lots up for auction. Pfeiffer's has posted this on their project website. They're advertising right now. We're continuing to get a few calls and questions and interest from potential buyers. The auction is scheduled to start on January 11th and scheduled to close on January 12th. It will be an online auction, online only. And there's a sort of a provision that allows any late bids to extend the duration of that auction. So I just wanted the group to be aware that that's up and online. And if you're getting calls and questions, certainly feel free to send them our way. Otherwise, the Pfeiffer's website has a bunch of good information about the auction sales. So we look forward to not being horse barn owners soon.
Great. Questions on the horse barn or auctions in general? Are we going to have any other property that we're going to be disposing of in that manner? I seem to recall that we've got a number of different acquisitions that we've had over the years.
Yeah, good question. I have been working to develop what we call an asset map book, an asset lands map book, and that basically is a map showing all of the parcels that we own that we don't think we need for the project. And I think our intention is to review those asset lands with staff, city, county staff, diversion authority consultants, and just make sure that there's no other known public use for those parcels. But then ultimately we would be bringing forward any recommendations to dispose of those lands through the committee process. I would hope that we're ready to do that relatively soon, and it may be in a staged fashion. We do have some land that we acquired right on the edge of Oxbow, where there was an old Hickson Grain Company elevator. We had to acquire that land to install a storm sewer. And the storm sewer project is either done or just about done. And that leaves us with some remnant lands there that I think could basically fetch some pretty good money. In talking with Mayor Nyhoff from Oxbow, he's informed me that they have sold all of their vacant lots, and there still is fairly strong development interest. And so I think this area where the Hickson Grain Company was located could be a site where we might want to dispose of that sooner than later, perhaps even this winter, so that it's ready for any development interest by springtime. So we are visiting with City of Oxbow tonight at their council meeting to talk about a couple other matters, and I anticipate this will come up at that point as well.
Okay. Any other questions on any of our auction policies or any of that extra remnant property? Dan, let's talk about outreach to property owners.
Yeah, I think the outreach committee had a brief discussion about this as well, and I see Rocky and others are on, so they may have a few things to add. But again, we had this big outreach effort in October to upstream property owners, roughly 700 parcels and 400 or so property owners that are impacted, plus another, 1,500 non-impacted property owners. And so quite a bit of outreach effort in that regard. Over the last month or month and a half, we have been getting a handful of calls and questions. Our land agents have been doing follow-up with those property owners as we had committed to in the correspondence. We're getting some address corrections. We're getting some detailed questions about what about this scenario? What about that scenario? We're getting some people who have said, I'm ready to sell. And so kind of as expected, that type of feedback. And one of the other things that was commented on in that outreach was we were planning to start the appraisal process here this fall. And I mentioned that earlier, we're working in that regard.
So are you doing any other group outreach? Are you going to townships or anything like that?
Well, I know that Joel has offered to meet with any and all townships, and there has been a few of those meetings that have occurred. I guess I'd let Joel or maybe others chime in if they want to add more details to that.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So, Madam Chair, we have met with a number of townships, and we continue to keep conversations moving forward. Most of those township meetings have been centered around getting an MOU in place that defines the diversion authority's responsibilities to the township. Those conversations have been going very well. In the last month, we've met with Stanley Township, Harwood Township, Holy Cross Township, and I know our engineering director, Chris Bachigard, has been having phone calls with many of the others. And so those conversations continue to move forward. We hope to have those MOUs in place by January is what our goal is. And I would say in general, a majority of those conversations are moving forward in that direction. And so I'm pretty upbeat that we'll be able to meet that schedule. We're also talking to them about the Clomar impacts and whatnot, but most of the time the discussions evolve into talking about specific township impacts, roads that are going to be closed, how we're going to address impacts during the operation of the project, and those sorts of things. So yes, we've been having a lot of robust township meetings over the last month.
Good. I noted that, last year, several of us went to a township meeting in northern Richland County, and there was a lot of confusion. And I recall them asking Eric a lot of hydrology questions. He was very impressive. So has any of that been addressed? Because they just really seemed ill-informed on the project in general and what was going to happen.
So, Madam Chair, we have not engaged those townships to the same extent that we have the townships that are impacted by construction. But we will note that, and we will put them on the list and have our township team reach out to them. I do know Eric and others have been notified by certain landowners in northern Richland County that have hydrology and hydraulic concerns, and we have engaged HMG to provide adequate response to those concerns. And so I think that's probably indicative of some of the confusion in those townships with some of those people. So we will note that and move forward with engaging those townships as well.
One of my takeaways from that particular meeting was that, there was a core group of people that were very vocal, but after, and very negative. But after the meeting, several people came up to me and thanked us for being there and really appreciated the information and, just really felt like they learned a lot. So I think it would be well worth our while to visit with those folks. They just really hadn't been hearing the whole story. So.
Yeah, I would agree, Madam Chair, and that has been my personal experiences over the last few months in meeting with the townships. The meetings start out very defensive, and by the end of the meeting, we were having great conversation about specific elements and things associated with the project. And so from my perspective, it's been a general lack of understanding of what is happening and what the impacts are going to be, and what and how the diversion authority is standing up and meeting the obligations that we have to compensate and mitigate for those impacts.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, comments about any of that outreach?
Yeah, Mary.
I had attended the Holy Cross. Sorry, Kevin.
Go ahead.
I had attended the Holy Cross Township meeting, and I think that there are some pretty legitimate concerns about road impacts and existing ditches. And Joel and the team were very open to discussing that further. So I think my experience from what I observed was, the townships do have questions because they aren't privy to sitting through these meetings every month like all of us. But from what I observed, I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to follow up, and I apologize for asking. Maybe I should have asked it during the public outreach, but at one time during the contested case, when it came to mitigation, we were going back and forth between our mitigation plan 4 versus 5. What transpired in this settlement? Are we? Did the settlement focus towards more on the most recent version of the mitigation plan, or is that not yet determined? I apologize for asking this, but I've been away for a while, so.
Yeah, well, good. Oh, go ahead, Joel, if you want.
Yeah, well, thanks, Commissioner Campbell, and we certainly understand why you were away, and we welcome you back and hope that you're getting up to speed. It's a very good question, and I think this is a great opportunity to have, answer that question and get some of that information out there. The DNR is not recognizing version 5 of the PRAM at this point. Nor do we expect them to recognize that. And so we are continuing to work off of version 4. However, I think as we move forward and the contested case is released and there won't be an ALJ determination, the DNR would hope and wish that we can modify permit condition number 22. And a lot of this has to do with semantics in the way that the state of Minnesota and the DNR views, and they don't like the term mitigation. They would prefer to focus on impacts. And so what the Buffalo Red and a number of other folks within the Richland-Wilkin JPA, their primary concern was allowing flexibility for rural residences to stay in place and potentially provide physical, I won't call it mitigation, but physical barriers or protection for their properties. And really the way the DNR views it is if you raise a property or a house or a structure out of the new 100-year floodplain, there would not be impacts to that structure that would require us to buy that structure out. And so the idea is, and what we've committed to, is that we would engage the landowners and talk about options there. If necessary, if a homeowner would wish to stay in place, and the diversion authority would pay the cost to raise the structure, bring in fill, get them out of the floodplain, it would not be triggered by the Minnesota DNR's requirement to purchase that structure and remove it from the floodplain. So I think we got a lot of that clarified, and we did obligate ourselves to giving homeowners the option, if feasible. Now we know there's certain structures within the upstream pool area where you can't physically raise the ground 5 to 6 feet. It just is, and the access to that parcel would not be there during a 100-year flood event. And so we do have a few policy provisions or guidelines to how we would implement that. But in general, and especially on the Minnesota side, I think most of those parcels would have an opportunity to stay in place, and we would provide physical implementation of removing them out of the floodplain.
Well, that's an excellent recap. Thank you, Joel, and I think there's a lot of good in that. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, then let's move on to the Floyd easement study, item 8.
Yeah, hi, Madam Chair and committee members, Eric again. Just a brief update. I know that we've tried to provide an update on the Floyd easement study for the last month or two. We are just about ready to have that task order from Crown Appraisals ready for committee approval. At this point, we anticipate bringing that forward to the December Finance Committee for their blessing and review. At the time, I guess I would like this committee to be aware of it as well. There are substantial amount of information that we've been gathering and supplying to the Crown appraisal team. They've been reviewing that and helping refine their proposal. One of the reasons why it didn't get placed on the committee agenda today is that, as you may recall, one of the provisions of the settlement agreement is that the Richland Wilkin group wanted an opportunity to review and provide comments on the sample Floyd easement document itself. And so that has been circulated, and John and his team are assimilating the comments that we've received back. And so that sample Floyd easement agreement should be shored up here in a matter of a week or so, and will make its way as an attachment to the task order with Crown appraisals that we look forward to having for the December committee meeting.
Great. Questions, comments? Then, a little bigger item, pages 20 to 23, the forgivable loan program.
Yeah, so in your packet is, I think, a 4-page document regarding the rural impact mitigation program, and specifically wanted to have a bit of discussion about the administration of the forgivable loan itself. The first 2 pages of this are things that I believe the committee has seen before, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of all that. Much of it's background information that provides some key terms, a little bit of intention and framework for the program itself. And then starting on the 3rd page, under the program administration, towards the bottom of that, there's really what I wanted to, that section right there. Program administration. And so these are some steps that we have proposed and recommended to the Cass County Joint Board, and look forward to discussing with the MCCJ board tomorrow as well. This is really about how do we administer the program, and we have a lot of lessons learned as we've been through the processes in Oxbow, where we were essentially rebuilding homes. And in this situation, we might find ourselves where we're helping reestablish or rebuild farmsteads. So in that process, I guess I'll walk through this here. The Diversion Authority will provide the loan to the displaced farmstead owner and secure a mortgage in favor of the DA. The Joint Board and the MIC Board are the members of the DA and are responsible for relocation of those properties. As such, the Joint Board and the MIC Board will administer the forgivable loan program on behalf of the DA. So this is very much like the Joint Board is helping administer relocation benefits. And so this loan program is essentially part of the relocation benefit package. And so it's consistent with how we've been handling that. Getting into item 3A on the sheet here, we know that we need to establish what the loan amount will be. And for a farmstead, for example, we have retained a group of retired farm professionals from NDSU. They have a consulting business called Mid-America Consultants International. That's the MACI term you see in the document here. The MACI group has been engaged, and they have a scope of work to help define what's functionally equivalent. And that functional equivalent determination will then have a cost estimate developed for it. And that cost estimate will help establish the loan amount. And that loan amount will be something that needs to be approved, presented and approved for approval by the Joint Board and the MIC Board. Once those loan amounts are established onto 3B, those loan proceeds would be held in an escrow account. The title company has been doing that for us all along, and they've been doing a fine job, and so that's our recommendation. Those escrow account really sort of serves as a construction loan. And so as the property owner is constructing their improvements, they would have a process that is spelled out here to tap into those funds. Item C also points out that we would like to have the loan recipient prepare a replacement facility improvements plan. And so this plan would include a site plan showing the location of their improvements, a description of the facilities that they're planning to build, cost estimates for those improvements, as well as some type of financing plan that basically ensures that they're able to complete the entire project. And what we mean by that is, we're going to be providing money to the displaced property owner in the terms of buyout funds as well as this loan proceeds. But in our experience in Oxbow and other places, the property owners want to put some of their own money and have some betterments into the process. And so we want to make sure that they have a complete financial package to be able to complete their overall plan. And so that replacement facility improvements plan would be reviewed and ultimately presented for approval by the joint board and the MIC board. And so once we have the loan amount approved and the plan approved, then it's just a matter of administering the construction draws. And so as we get into items F and throughout the document, then what we're anticipating is that the land agent would really work with the loan recipient to handle any loan disbursement requests if those disbursement requests are consistent with the plan that was laid out, and if they're within the allowance that was established by the maximum loan amount, then the land agent would have the authority to release funds from the escrow account and make sure that the property owner then gets reimbursed for those costs. And so that really helps streamline the process. Our experience was, as we got into Oxbow and some of those acquisitions, if we weren't going to be streamlined in this, we ended up being asked to have basically pay for construction financing, and that was something we were trying to avoid as we administered this process moving forward. Towards the end of this, item J just talks about, once it's complete, once the loan recipient feels that their replacement facility is complete, there'll be a walkthrough and just a confirmation that the project has been completed, and any final loan disbursement request would be made. And then item K just points out that we do have a 10-year term on forgiving these loans. That 10-year term would start when the loan agreement is signed with the property. So that's probably a lot to throw at you, but I guess I feel like this has been developed with input from our land agents who went through this process, not only in Oxbow, but in other locations, as well as input from the legal folks at Onsta Twitchell. We did preview this with the joint board last week, and they've incorporated all of the feedback so far. So, stand for any questions.
Thanks, Eric.
Madam Chair, if I may. Eric, this was a item that was discussed in the settlement agreement as well. During negotiations, the upstream JPA had proposed something similar to this. They were not aware of this program. We were able to preview this program with them, and they were absolutely blown away. They thought it was exactly what they were looking for. And it was much more well-defined than what they were proposing, and it was reviewed and accepted as part of that settlement agreement. So I just wanted to note that as well, prior to any questions about the program. So thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Anybody else have any questions? When will this be presented to the DA board?
I guess this program was submitted and presented to the DA board a couple months ago, approved by the DA board. Right now, and I think, Mary, what from my standpoint anyway, I know this committee has asked to be sort of kept in the loop of all the sort of inner workings of the program. And so that was my intention today, was to bring forward some of these inner workings. The DA board did approve the incorporation of the rural impact mitigation program and the forgivable loan concept a couple months back. I think that maybe was in September, if I recall right.
Right, and I recall that we made that recommendation to them. I'm just wondering if there's any changes or additions that they need to approve.
I guess not from my standpoint.
Down a little deeper now.
Yeah, right. I guess from my standpoint, I think the policy was approved, and now we're sort of working to frame out all the exact inner workings of how it's actually going to be implemented.
Okay, great, thanks. Anyone else? Then we have item 10, which is the committee update that I can give tomorrow. I don't know if anybody else has any input on that. And then there's the item 11, the Joint Water Resource District update. Roger, do you have anything?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, Cass County Joint Board just continues to do its job. Land agents, I think, are doing an excellent job of building rapport with the landowners that we need to acquire land from. Obviously, because some of the items come before the county commission, we're not able to settle with everyone. But realize that even though it goes to the county commission and we go to the quick take actions going forward, negotiations continue right up to the end, right before the judge grants us the right of quick take. So we strive to get those purchases done without the quick take action, but certainly we need that as the ability to acquire the land that the project needs. That's it for now. No major issues. We just continue with the process. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. And I will say that those meetings, I appreciate, the team's efforts at those meetings. They can get to be pretty lengthy. Eric presents all of the various cases, and your counsel there, Mr. McShane and Fredericks, both do a really great job of explaining what exactly the role of the county commission is, and maybe more importantly is not, during those proceedings. And so I think it's gone about as well as it can, and certainly at times it's just a necessary process to go through, because what is the value of some of this property? I think sometimes that really does need to be settled in court rather than negotiated out. So unfortunately, that's where it ends up sometimes. But how about the Minnesota side? Who's got that? Kevin or Jenny or?
Well, we haven't met. We meet tomorrow. I don't know if Eric has anything he wants to update. I was not able to make the last one, so I don't know if Eric has any updates. But
yeah, thanks, Kevin, and good to see you again. The MIC board actually did not meet last month, and so we are meeting tomorrow. Continuing to just sort of make some progress there on easements, and we got a few minor contracting actions on some appraisal work. Otherwise, I think Minnesota group is sort of staging and getting ready to hit the ground in a big way next year.
Any questions on the Minnesota side? Okay. How about MetroCOG? Do you have, is Adam here today, or anybody from MetroCOG that has anything to add?
I normally reach out to Adam before these meetings. I failed to do that this month since he did present his report last month, so I'm not sure if he's with us or not.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's probably anything further that has really happened there at this point, but look forward to
Madam Chair.
Ongoing updates. Yes. Who's that?
This is Rocky. This is Rocky Schneider.
Hi,
Rocky.
Rocky.
I can update a little bit on MetroCOG.
Sure.
I'm on their board. They did approve the FM Greenway plan at our October board meeting. And I guess just in addition to that, I did have a meeting with MetroCOG actually this morning about next steps on how they want to implement that plan. And they were wondering for some updates on that and some coordination with the Diversion Authority. So I know they're looking at, okay, how do they take the next step with that? So they are continuing to be involved and not just putting together the plan, but trying to help all the entities come together on it.
And I assume that that's something that we'll be looking at perhaps when we go into session this January for if there's anything that would apply.
Yep, part of the discussion for sure.
Thank you, Rocky. Any other questions for Rocky or?
Mary, if I can ask a question of Eric.
Sure.
This afternoon, I learned in the outreach meeting about the agreement with Comstock, where the Diversion Authority through the Clay County would construct that road, their main road. Was there a time frame issue on that that was agreed to, and was there going to be some work that Comstock would have to do with utilities underneath that road prior to the county? I guess I serve on our highway tracking committee too, and if that needs to be worked on soon, I want to know about that. So.
Joel's on, I'd probably let Joel comment on that.
Yeah, Commissioner Campbell, Chris Bockyard and I did have a meeting with Dave Overbo concerning schedule. Dave had indicated to us that that county road east of Comstock was on the county's capital improvement plan, and that they were anticipating doing an overlay on that county highway next summer. And so, in an effort to really, hit a lot of the programs and commitments that the Diversion Authority committed to in the settlement agreement, I guess from my perspective, I would like us to see the implementation of as much as we can, as quick as we can. What that shows is that we're meeting our obligations. We're doing what we said we were going to do. And I think there's a lot of public perception value in escalating those types of projects. And so our discussion with Mr. Dave Overbo was our preference would be to see the county do that road project within Comstock, perhaps in conjunction with the overlay of the county highway, in an effort to, one, get more competitive bids on the asphalt for the in-town Comstock project, and two, just I've been on that road many times. It definitely needs some work, and so I would anticipate that we're looking at implementing that project next summer. Dave was in agreement with that, and so that's kind of where we left it. Dave was going to work internally within Clay County to move towards that schedule. So,
thank you, Joel. We have a highway meeting next Tuesday, I believe, and I will push that gets done. It makes sense that it be tied together and probably save some money. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Is there any other business? Any other business? Well, with that, Kevin, welcome back. You were missed. Glad you're okay. My sincere condolences for your loss. Everyone else, try to stay healthy and have a blessed Thanksgiving. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Mary.